It's the same situation every time I have to cover Shredder or Splinter. It's tough to tell the story of one of them without repeating the same beats from the other one. But in the case of the Rise of the TMNT show, things were even more challenging, as Shredder and Splinter are part of the same story. So I did this in two parts to tell the two sides of the story without boring anyone. The first one, which you're watching right now, will be centered on the origins of Splinter. The second one, also now available for you to watch, will be centered on the Shredder and the origins of the Hamato clan. Together, these two parts will provide a comprehensive understanding of Splinter, Shredder, and the Hamato clan as portrayed in the Rise of the TMNT TV series. I highly recommend watching both to grasp the full narrative. Now, let's get started with Splinter. I've previously covered the original Splinter and many of his other incarnations, but this time around, Andy Suriano and Ann Ward decided to go for a very distinct interpretation of the character. Like in some previous versions, this character started as Hamato Yoshi, who later mutated into an anthropomorphic rat. Yet this iteration steps away from the usual conflicts with the Rokusaki and the Foot Clan, moving past the franchise's traditional themes of revenge. Eric Bauza voiced Splinter this time, having previously portrayed Tiger Claw and Han in the 2012 series. He describes Splinter as a blend of Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid and Frank Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The influence of It's Always Sunny is significant, with the show being developed as some sort of kid-friendly version of that sitcom. In many other ways, his Hollywood persona of Lou Jitsu was influenced by famous martial artist actors like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Ironically, the latter would end up voicing Splinter in Mutant Mayhem. You also have to consider that there was pressure to make this show look and feel different from the previous incarnation, as there was almost no gap between them, and producers didn't want kids to get confused with the two shows. With that in mind, they made this Splinter feel more like a father figure than a stoic sensei. Throughout the series, Splinter would affectionately call the kids by their colors, eventually calling them by their names. This was also a Splinter with a catchphrase, "Hot Soup," which had its origin in Lou Jitsu's movies. The network was pressuring staff writers Russ Carney and Ron Corsillo to come up with a catchphrase for the show. Otherwise, they would need to start using Cowabunga. But they didn't want to use Cowabunga as they wanted a weirder option. Then, one day, when they were writing the episode Origami Tsunami, they came up with a scene where Lou Jitsu weaponized some soup. Much like the name Lou Jitsu, they thought nobody would be cool with hot soup. Yet, while it never officially became an approved catchphrase, they kept pushing for it until the network gave up. Unlike previous versions, this storyline does not feature a love triangle involving Saki, Yoshi, and Shen. However, Tang Shen exists in this universe as an actress who worked with Lou Jitsu in Jitsu for Justice. This version of Splinter also has a prehensile tail, an idea that's been suggested by writers for past iterations, but in the end was always rejected. This tail can also extend, but I think these abilities are of a mystic nature more than a mutation. But why was Splinter so different? What caused the significant change in direction? The answer begins in Yoshi's childhood in Japan. On a spring day, his father Sho narrated how the Shredder nearly destroyed a village before being struck by the Hamato clan's mightiest weapon. This encounter banished the Shredder and the weapon to the Twilight Realm indefinitely. While observing the clan totem on a scroll, Yoshi noticed his mother, Atsuko, wearing the same emblem. He realized something heartbreaking was about to happen. Atsuko told him that she needed to go to keep watch for the return of the Shredder. Yoshi then asked her who would hug him whenever he got scared, to which she replied, "Anata wa hitori janai," a Japanese phrase that translates to "you are not alone." In the context of the Hamato clan, this had a deeper meaning, as it reassured its members that the rest of the clan, alive or in spirit form, were with them. Yoshi saw his mother walk away, and then she turned around and told him that, one day, he would understand the importance of their mission, and that was why he needed to train with his grandpa. However, losing his mother to the cause, for what he perceived as a mythical threat, gradually diminished his interest in the clan's teachings. Sho wanted Yoshi to follow the clan's legacy, but Yoshi didn't want to waste his entire life waiting for a made-up boogeyman to show up. Yoshi instead wanted fame. Yoshi leveraged his training to become a celebrated movie star, first in Japan and then in the United States, under the screen name Lou Jitsu. As time passed, his relentless pursuit of fame led to a strained relationship with his grandfather, eventually causing them to cease communication. One day, during the production of Crouching Shrimp Hidden Tiger Prawn, Yoshi met Big Mama, the teamster who drove his trailer, and the two became romantically involved. The two were inseparable until the night he decided to propose to her. This was when she revealed to be yokai and kidnapped him to the hidden city to force him to fight in the battle nexus.
Not really the response I was looking for. In hindsight, I may have missed a few clues.
Lou Jitsu, still a famed fighter in the battle nexus, grew tired of violence over time, and hoped to be released from this forced combat. However, his life took an unexpected turn when Baron Draxum, an alchemist warrior, entered the scene. Draxum was deeply concerned about humanity's treatment of the yokai and their forced retreat into the hidden city. Draxum interpreted some prophecies as foretelling a human threat to the yokai. To create protectors for the yokai, he started experimenting with a substance called Empyrean that flowed from the eyes of the Crying Titan. Spoiler alert, this was actually fuel spilling from an ancient spaceship. This substance may have created all the original yokai and may have been the source of all mystic power. Also, spoiler alert, the prophecy wasn't about humans, but I'll cover that in the Shredder video. The key to creating great warriors was to mix the ooze with the right DNA. Lou Jitsu came to mind, as he was already the champion of the battle nexus. Unfortunately, Big Mama refused to part with him, even though he hadn't fought in ages after swearing off violence. Draxum sent his Goyles to kidnap him, to which Yoshi agreed as long as he didn't have to fight again. In captivity, Yoshi grew fond of 4 turtles. Draxum believed turtles, inherently durable and defensive, were ideal for transformation into protectors, but their lack of speed was a drawback, and that's why Yoshi's DNA was essential. Yoshi didn't want the turtles to be experimented on, but despite his complaints, the experiment continued. Yoshi freed himself, fought Draxum, and freed the turtles, who were now mutated. Turtles who now shared their DNA with Yoshi, making them his biological sons. In the ensuing chaos, Draxum's Goyles inadvertently triggered a series of events leading to the laboratory's destruction. During the commotion, Yoshi's pet rat bit him, and he was doused in ooze, mutating him into an anthropomorphic rat. This happened roughly in 2005. By then, he was in his early 40s. Now, looking like a rat, he realized that his acting career was over, and his only purpose left in life was taking care of the boys. For the majority of those 13 years, Splinter trained the turtles only sporadically, leading a predominantly sedentary lifestyle. His acting career was no longer an option, and his life's original purpose was overshadowed by the trauma of his mother's abandonment at a young age. Determined not to repeat her mistake, he devoted himself to the turtles, regardless of whether the Shredder myth was true. It's worth mentioning that despite his appearance, he was still a Battle Nexus champion, and throughout the series he would often defeat his sons in battle. The series did not explicitly reveal why Splinter named the turtles as he did. Writer Ron Garcia suggested that perhaps Splinter appreciated Renaissance art, which likely influenced their names. After encountering Baron Draxum, the turtles learned of his plan to mutate beings using ooze-skeetos. This discovery led them to the Grand Nexus Hotel, owned by Big Mama, who persuaded them to collect ooze-skeetos for her. Unfortunately, they then learned that she was the one running the Battle Nexus and simply wanted to use the ooze-skeetos to create new warriors, and of course, to use the turtles as fighters as well. They were quickly interrupted by Baron Draxum, who didn't take lightly that his ooze-skeetos were stolen. During his fight with Big Mama, Draxum threatened the turtles by telling them that he may have created them, but he wouldn't hesitate to destroy them. This was the moment the turtles found out they were created by him. In any case, Splinter also had a pet goldfish named Piebald, which the turtles accidentally flushed down the toilet one day. Trying to cover their tracks, they replaced the fish with a googly-eyed rock. In a twist reminiscent of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Piebald returned a year later, seeking retribution. She recounted her narrow escape from a trash wizard to Leo, and how consuming an Uskito led to her mutation. Upon discovering the fake rock at home, Piebald and Splinter conspired to teach the turtles a lesson about honesty. Following this incident, Piebald was warmly accepted into the family. Until this point, Splinter had been a relaxed father figure, intent on not repeating his parents' mistakes. However, it wasn't long before he discovered the harsh reality that the legend of the Shredder was true, leading him to realize he had spent his life pursuing misguided goals. To see how Splinter guides his family in facing the emerging threat of the Shredder, watch part 2 of the series, The Shredder Video. Thanks for watching.